We've got two stories to start the week here. Both of them are related, I think, at least. Mainly because it's PSA and GameStop. There was an interesting story that came out about somebody apparently went to GameStop and they were trying to get a bunch of vintage Star Wars cards graded, and the total came out to like $370,000, and the package has gone missing. Now, this was a story from TikTok that made its way to a website called The Daily Dot, and then made its way to Twitter, which I saw people talking about it over the weekend. And some people are saying it's an older story. They've made some updates within the story that was written. But there's a lot of speculation, if I'm going to be honest. There's a lot of speculation about if it's a true story, if he did actually even submit these cards, or if PSA or GameStop had them at all. And I don't know. I mean, I don't want to necessarily make up an opinion based on a story that could potentially be not correct. But I will say that if the story ends up being correct, this is one of the issues and dangers I thought about GameStop really getting into cards, was the fact that they're not a card store. So like I don't think GameStop employees are necessarily equipped to do these types of things. Like, I don't know. I think the number, the 300, because people were saying that the $370,000 number, it's like, if you're getting $370,000 worth of cards graded, it probably makes sense to just like go and drop them off yourself. Like, if you have $300,000 worth of cards, like a plane ticket and hotel to a PSA drop-off location or to PSA in general is going to be much cheaper, or it's going to be much safer, in my opinion, which is why, I don't know. I have like a PSA account and I've graded cards at last year's National. Unfortunately, not this year yet. I'm hoping to maybe go somewhere and get some cards graded before the year ends, or maybe in the new year at some point in January or February or something like that. But I have gotten cards graded through a secondary, but like through a card store, not through GameStop. So again, it's moving pieces. I don't know if there's going to be updates to this story. I mean, it really seems like one of those viral stories that kind of goes out into the ether and then doesn't really get updated. I don't know. I'll look for updates and maybe I'll remember to find it and maybe I won't. But again, the person made a TikTok saying that they were getting all these cards graded. A lot of people are saying that the story doesn't really add up. There are things that don't really make a lot of sense from the GameStop perspective and from his own perspective of like, why are you going to GameStop to get vintage Star Wars $300,000 worth of cards graded? Like, that doesn't make much sense in my opinion. But because it's just like, if you have $300,000 worth of cards, you know probably what you have. Now, granted, also $300,000, I believe, was if all 20 of the cards came back PSA 10, which vintage Star Wars, the chances that all of them come back PSA 10, not so great. So in theory, it could maybe only be like 10, 20, 30, maybe 100K, but still the number is large enough and the cards are important enough that I feel like you should be bringing those cards to a card shop and not to GameStop, where this is the first thing that they did. So now the other piece of this, not really this story specifically, but it's about PSA with GameStop technically, because PSA, Nat Turner, on Sunday announced that they are going to be doing sort of this new program with the PSA Vault where you're going to have like automatic offers and like liquidity if you're trying to sell your cards, because they have a network of buyers and people who are trying to get cards. So like there's an opportunity for you don't have to go through the whole process of like, you don't have to go through the whole process of putting your card up for auction or putting it up in your PSA vault and then having to wait until someone buys it. There's going to be the option where if you're in the United States, I believe, and you have, or if you have the vault in the United States, there's going to be a chance that you'll be able to just sell your cards like in really quickly, like not even have to, like I said, go through an auction. Now, I was looking at the comments And I was trying to see like what people were thinking about it. It seemed like people were pretty positive. Like it really, sometimes I'm surprised when I see stories and I'm like, I don't know what people are going to think about this. And I would say 9 times out of 10, there's a lot of negativity. Like even with that story I was just talking about, half of the comments were like, that guy's lying. But a decent amount of the comments were pretty positive about this new change that PSA is bringing out. The one thing that somebody brought up that I thought was a very interesting comment was like, is this network of buyers, I'm using network in parentheses here or for the fake quotes, is this network of buyers just GameStop? Like, because we do know that Nat Turner has joined the board at GameStop. I talked about that last week, and now they have, which also PSA, I believe, has like a network of breakers, I think, that work with them directly through. Oh no, maybe that was Fanatics Collects. That might have been Fanatics Collects, I think, actually. Well, PWCC, but Fanatics Collects now because they took over PWCC. But so the main question was like, how do they, like, who are the buyers? Like, that's kind of the main question that I have here for this new thing that PSA is offering. And if it is GameStop, that does make a lot of sense for them to try and get inventory. I would be interested to know if they'll ever come out with who is the ones buying these cards. But if in like 2, 3, 4, 5 months from now, you just see GameStops have like these crazy amount of cards in them, I wouldn't be surprised if PSA is the one buying the cards and then either giving them to GameStop, or it's just like there's some sort of thing in here where it's like, I don't know how the actual money is moving around necessarily, but I think that there's probably going to be something there where in that time you might see. Like, I don't think GameStop would ever have a online vault service because they would probably just tell you to go to PSA, and that makes much more sense. But I wouldn't be surprised if, like, instead of, I don't know, if they have card cases and with cards, with whether it's sports cards or whether it's trading cards in cases, rather than having some of these like used games. Because I mean, I think GameStop, I don't know, in a way, the business itself, I don't know how they really like make a ton of their money. Like realistically, it's more just that they buy used games for super cheap and then they sell them for whatever. They buy them for $2. Like, let's say it's like Madden from last year or the year before. Like, they would offer you $2 and they'd sell it for 10, and they're hoping that they're going to be able to sell a couple of those, which it's like, in reality, that's, you know, the old Maddens are not going like, and if it's a game that comes out every year, Call of Duty, maybe a little bit different, but like Maddens where it's like an updated game with updated rosters, or any sports games in general, maybe not just Madden, like it doesn't make sense for people to want to buy those. Like, sure, maybe people want to buy them for like a collection, or I don't know, maybe they have like a favorite player who was on the cover that year or something like that. But overall, I don't know. I think GameStop, and it's maybe one of the main reasons why, like a couple of years ago, I think it was a couple of years ago, and it's happening now too, which is weird. Like the stock thing where people in the stock market were shorting the stock. And I think that was the name of the thing I was trying to come up with the other day that I forgot. They were shorting the stock, basically being like, GameStop is going to fail. And then people put money in and basically pumped it up to this crazy thing. But I mean, I don't know. If you look at GameStop overall, it's not like a sustainable, or maybe it is. In my opinion, I don't think it's necessarily a sustainable business in the gaming industry, especially when nowadays you look at the gaming consoles, and this could be one thing that maybe someone like Nat Turner is looking at GameStop and saying there's a good opportunity for them to totally shift their business model and shift it into sports cards and trading cards. And it becomes like a retail, some sort of franchise retailer for PSA or for, well, I guess it would be PSA. It wouldn't be any other company because unless PSA somehow acquires GameStop, which that would be pretty wild, which I don't know. I don't necessarily think that's out of the realm of possibility. I think that could be happening. Like if they like that could be part of Nat Turner going to doing the deal or something like that, becoming on the board. There could be a possibility where in the future he's just gonna be like, yeah, I'm just gonna buy this, and then that becomes PSA's like retail store. It's just GameStop, which then within the sports card industry, I mean, maybe one of the first big ones was PSA to or PWCC to Fanatics. So like, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that a company would come in and try and rebrand GameStop or try and rebrand the company just in general. Because like, again, I think within the sports card industry, their marketing has been something that I think people overlook pretty significantly. And if you are GameStop and you can acquire if you're PSA and you can acquire GameStop's customer base and all of their customer data, that's really what I think is the more important piece of these deals is the customer data. Because realistically, I think we don't realize how much data we actually are giving away to companies and how much that data actually is going in the future. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some sort of, I don't think it's gonna be a class action lawsuit, but it really is also going to come down to like if Congress or anybody in the government really even wants to look into this. But like, I just think that companies like Facebook, all the social media companies are obviously we already know about all the data that they have, but like the internal data of companies, I think, is maybe some of the more important information than just like, oh, we're just going to turn this into like GameStop. We're going to turn GameStop into like a card store or something like that. But that, I think, ultimately, if they are the ones that are buying these cards, like if PSA is the one buying and then they're sending them to GameStop, I wouldn't be surprised if that happened. And I mean, if somebody is talking about it in comments on Twitter, like it's got to be something that other people have thought of as well. We have some info on some sets that are coming out soon. One for Panini and then a couple for Topps. So there was some Prism football info that came out that I saw Ryan Cracknell from Beckett posted. So I was looking at that. They have the design, which I think the design was like released earlier this month, I believe. And there was also a video that Panini put out that I thought was very interesting. And they put how many rookies are going to be in each box, which I don't remember if I had ever seen a specific number of rookies Panini or even Topps really had decided to put in the box or at least publicize how many rookies were coming in the box. And I'm wondering if one day rookies will ever become like some sort of hit in like they usually are. And I think this is obviously maybe a little bit of a hypothetical like that, or even just a statement on sort of the sports card industry in general. Like rookies obviously are what are driving the product, but I don't really ever remember Panini or Topps putting in like, this is how many rookies you're going to get in each box. But another interesting thing about some of the images that they put out a JJ McCarthy card. It was a rookie card and it has him in his Vikings helmet, but then also a Michigan uniform. So I don't know if they're going to, I guess this would be a set for all the rookies potentially, or even maybe not just rookies. Maybe it's just going to be all of the players are going to have some sort of mixture. And I think in Score, I believe it was, or there was some set that came out like a month or two ago that had a combination of pro cards and rookie cards in it, or college cards and pro cards, which was something that we hadn't really seen. We had definitely seen differences in both sets, but overall from Panini, we hadn't really seen Score. I guess Score kind of had it, but like, or actually, no, I don't know. I mean, maybe Score is one of the only examples I can think of, but it was like a National Treasures set that had pro cards, and it was a National Treasures collegiate set, but it also had pro. Oh, no, sorry. No, actually, I'm mistaken. It was a mixture of players who are in college now and players who were in the pros but had their college uniforms. That's what it was. Not that it was mixture, because that, like, once I said Score, I was like, wait, so, but yeah, okay, so we got it. We're good. We're on the same page there. I think I remember what it was. But so this is, I think we're going to see potentially a combination of this more often, where you have a pro, like it's obviously Prism is a pro college, or I mean, oh gosh, sorry, I'm getting my words mixed up on the podcast today. It's a pro product, and now we're infusing college concepts into the product, which I think is very interesting. So that's actually also coming out December 18th. So we're a couple weeks away from that. And then this week for Topps, there were some decently important products I felt like that were coming out for them. The first one is going to be, and you know what? I'm going to be annoyed about this. This actually came out yesterday, but it was 2023 Cosmic Chrome, which was one of the products we had kind of seen teased for a little bit when Topps was announcing they were going to get back into unlicensed basketball, and it's obviously got the Victor Wembanyama, so we're going to get more Victor Wembanyama cards, even though we're in November of the 2024 season. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know why they had to wait this long to do an unlicensed set. Like if it was redemptions, I guess maybe on one hand, I'm happy that they aren't going to have redemptions in the product. But on the other hand, I'm like, if it's a product that is coming out last year or coming out the previous year and it has rookie cards, like at what point? Like, I don't know if 10 years from now we're going to look back at this product or this type of thing and know that it came out a year after it probably should have. But at what point do we can we stop calling them rookie autos or autos that were, because if they're signed and they're cards that are getting signed and they're coming out later than their rookie year, like it just feels like, I don't know, I don't really like it. So again, that's, I talked about the Topps doing this with football also at the beginning of the football season. They came out with a football product for last season at the beginning of this season. I wasn't a huge fan. So they're doing this again for basketball. So whatever. Then UEFA Euro Sapphire, which again, they're promoting the national debut, which is they have the new new national debut logo on the card. And it looks like they're including like a flag on there, or maybe that's just a bunch of different colors and that's just the logo itself. And I think it is maybe similar to it's similar to like the basketball product, where in my head I'm like, do we need these cards to come out? Like, do we need a new concept of a card? Like, that's not even really a new card. It's just a new logo. And I think in the past, I've probably said that I like the concept, and I think it's interesting. I think that I don't know if I necessarily would call it a reach to do this. I think it's good to define the cards that need to be defined, but at the same time, it's like, in the grand scheme of things, it should just be easier to tell when a player, it's almost like they're making a second rookie card for the player, for soccer at least, because they're doing, they have the club team, which has a soccer rookie card logo, but now they're also doing the national team debut, which is technically a rookie card logo. So I don't know. I think it's good that they're defining it, but at the same time, I'm still open to making my decision whether it's a good or it's a not good concept, I guess. And then I think probably the biggest product is going to be Bowman U Chrome 2024 for football. That comes out on Wednesday. And I don't 100% know who are going to be getting their first Bowmans in this product. I think based on some of the other Bowman Chrome U products, there have been players that have been in those products that have gotten their first Bowman, and we haven't really known that they were going to be getting their first Bowman. Like Cam Ward, for example. Like if you are buying a Cam Ward Bowman Chrome U card, you are buying his card on Washington State and not Miami. So ultimately, I wonder if that's going to make as much of a difference like it does in baseball. Because, some people are traditional collectors and they want the card of the player on the team that they started with. And I think over the course of past couple of years, I don't think it's been as much of an issue when it comes to people wanting that card. They want, like, if a player is if they're a rookie for the Yankees, they want a Bowman Chrome with a Yankees uniform or a Red Sox or whatever. They don't want, for example, like Eloy Jimenez, I believe is in like a Cubs uniform, and then he got traded. Or I'm trying to think of another player who would be a good example. I mean, I forget off the top of my head. I mean, I know there's like a couple of good prospects. And I mean, that's ultimately what happens with prospects sometimes is they get included in those deals. I think maybe Yohan Moncada, for example, I don't know if he's necessarily considered a massive prospect or a massive player in the league at this point. But he obviously is in a Red Sox uniform on that Bowman Chrome card or the Bowman Chrome card. So I don't know if it's going to be the same for like the Bowman Chrome for football. And again, like these are products that are changing sort of the college card industry in a way, in my opinion. So I think the rules that people are using for whatever other cards they're using, I'm not 100% sure if they apply to this product just yet. I think that as we see more of these products come out and as we see more college cards of college players while they're playing in college versus the pros, I think we're going to see more and more trends and more things that people are going to, decide one way or the other how they want to approach buying and selling those types of cards. And I do think it's a good thing that they are coming out with the cards when the players are in college. I think that's a big deal that I have talked about why I think it's a big deal and why I think in 10 years we're going to consider it a big deal. Maybe right now people don't see it that way, but I think that this is going to be a pretty significant shift in the way people collect college cards because they're getting the player before they make it to the pros. And especially, this product is going to have players from this year and the draft isn't for another 6 months. So it's like there's going to be 6 or 7 months of people being able to collect college cards of, the players who I don't necessarily know if any of them are going to be like Heisman contenders in this product that are getting their first Bowman. But maybe Ashton Gentry, potentially, I think he might have been in last year's product. But either way, then also the thing with college too, or with college football is like players, they have to play a certain amount of years before they can get drafted. So like Bowman Chrome U for basketball, the pipeline from getting your first Bowman to going into the pros is like 1 year after another potentially, where, with Cam Ward, for example, like he was in 2022 Bowman Chrome U. So it's like he's been in that year and then he probably will be in this year, not obviously getting his first Bowman Chrome card, but he'll probably be on Miami if I had to guess. I don't actually, maybe not. I mean, I guess when they made the configuration, he was still sort of like, I think he was like plus 3,000 or something at the beginning of the season for the Heisman. And now I think Travis Hunter is probably going to get the Heisman, but Cam Ward in the middle of the season there was definitely a contender. So I guess this is just going to be the second or third installment of the first time that, or of the licensed Bowman products, which again, I think Panini is dropping the ball here by not coming out with these types of products. So hopefully Panini can step it up. But either way, Topps I think is doing a big thing for the industry and making the change for college products. We now have some more examples of players getting involved in sports cards. I think at this point everybody's heard about the Topps update Chrome with the 1-of-1 patches in it. We have Jordan Lawler, who is actually a pretty big name, tweeting out that he's looking for the card. And then there was also a player on the Astros named Joey Lapafrido. That's definitely not how you pronounce his name, but he even put an inscription on his card, which I think, again, we've also seen an increase in inscriptions and Topps' promotion of inscriptions, which I think is very interesting because for years it felt like everybody really just wanted the regular card. And maybe that's one of the differences between where the sports card market was for I don't know, let's say for decades, probably, like where people really just wanted like the clean signature. They didn't really want anything over the top. And now we're seeing a group of people within the industry that are looking for something a little bit different. And I don't know if that is something that Topps and Fanatics are trying to promote necessarily, but I mean, we saw it with the Tom Brady numbered to 12 Bowman cards. There was inscriptions on those. And then on this, the inscription on this card was just basically, it wasn't just the auto. He put like the date. And then on the back of the card, he put DM me, which I guess that would in theory mean that he's looking to either buy the card or he's looking for the card. I think the names of the players aren't as large as some of I guess Jordan Lawler. I mean, Jordan Lawler for a while was a very interesting name from a Bowman perspective in the sports card industry. I think people really liked him. I mean, I think the Diamondbacks have a pretty good system. Corbin Carroll is another Diamondback, for example, and just the players getting involved more into cards, I think I don't know. I don't even really think it's obviously great for the industry, I think, because for years it felt like the sports card industry and sports in general were almost separate. Like we didn't really see these activations of these players getting involved in cards. And I think one of the things is a lot of these players are younger and they're on social media. And this is something I talk about with like LaMelo Ball. Zion maybe is another one. I think Giannis is another player who's talked about collecting his own cards. I was actually showing pictures of him collecting his own cards, which I think is very interesting. But you have players who are on social media and they see what these cards are going for. Like, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility, especially now that it's the off season. Like these players are probably working out and training, but then, they're probably on social media. I wouldn't be surprised. So like if you were on social media, 20 million views is 20 million views from the post that the Pirates had. It's probably not super surprising that some players are looking at it and saying, oh, wow, I didn't even really know that's the card that I was signing, basically. Well, at least this player with the inscription did know. Maybe he didn't know to the extent what he was signing because I'd say last year was a pretty good launch of this concept. And this year really, like, I was sort of surprised they didn't do some sort of huge marketing campaign with Fanatics the same way they did with like LeBron coming over to Bowman and Brady coming over to Bowman. But maybe like the Pirates thing was part of Topps' promotion. That was one of the things I kind of had been thinking of. Because like I said, Michael Rubin was in the comments of that Pirates post being like, I'm going to be bidding on this card, which obviously rookie of the year, Paul Skeens is the biggest player in this whole set. So I'd be interested to know if they asked him about the card, because there was also a video that Topps posted where it was like Paul Skeens is signing his rarest card, which I thought that was a little, I don't know. I thought the wording of that was kind of interesting, because wouldn't a 1 of 1, yeah, sure, it's rare, but isn't every 1 of 1 technically as rare as another 1 of 1? I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it a little bit there. But the players getting involved here, and we've seen that over this past baseball season too, with like Bobby Witt and Corbin Carroll, and I believe there was a pitcher who used to play for the Red Sox who played for the Phillies this year. I forget his name. He has long hair and he does like sports card related content. I think he was doing like, he was ripping packs at like different stadiums and stuff like that. But they all did. They had cards in their pockets, and then they got them authenticated by PSA, and they became like game worn cards, which I think is very cool. And we've seen players do tons of different things. Like they have, the cards on, I believe it was O'Neal Cruz, I believe it was, who had his Bowman card on his cleat. So again, I think that players getting more involved in cards, and we've really only seen it. I guess we've really seen it a lot more with baseball. And it could be that these past few examples have been that the past few examples have been during the off season. So like these players see these things and they realize, oh, this card actually, has a lot of significance. Because if you are a player signing those autographs, you're probably not like you probably have like thousands of autographs you're signing. This is obviously the one that I don't or this is the one that is the most important, but I don't necessarily know if every player knows the importance of cards that they're signing because they have to just sign these cards. So it's not like a Topps rep or somebody can look at them and say, oh, here's the card you're signing. This is the thing. They're just signing the card, putting it in the case, and then shipping it back out to Topps, which, we have seen a good job with them getting rid of some of the redemption. So I don't know, maybe they are focusing more on getting these players to make sure that they're signing. And like I said, I think it was yesterday's episode, that's probably, if I had to guess, the reason why they waited so long on this like cosmic, and I know this is sort of a different topic here, but they waited so long on the cosmic basketball, probably because they were trying to get rid of the redemptions. Because this is probably a product that, like, based on my knowledge of product, like research and doing like how they make the product itself, this was probably one that when Fanatics came in, this was probably one of their first products that they said, we're going to be doing this kind of, we're going to be getting a basketball product and we don't really care if we have the licenses or not. And then they obviously are going to get them. But we want to get rid of the redemptions, which I think is a good idea. And I know that the patch cards have redemptions, but they're not like, they're not the redemptions where you don't know whether they signed them. Like all these players should have probably signed these cards. I would imagine so. I don't think we would run into any circumstances where, I would hope not at least, where these players haven't signed the cards. And now, especially that it's the offseason, if any of these players haven't signed their cards, then I would hope that they would be able to get them signed quickly. All you got to do is talk to their agent and be like, look, this is a pretty important card that we need the player to sign. And again, I think Michael Rubin talked about trying to get more player equity within the industry. Like, I don't remember if he was saying this or if this was something that I had been thinking, but he was saying that they need to get the players more involved. And in my opinion, I think that needs to be more of a financial standpoint, and as well as maybe figuring out how to get the players just more involved in the industry as a whole. But the financial aspect of it, I think, is probably the most important thing that they need to make sure that these players are getting more money, I think, because for the industry, products are, whether we like it or not, for the most part, products are really, what's the word I'm looking for? They're run by, the industry is the autograph within a product is like the most important card. So for years, I think they were really just kind of shuffling through and getting all of these cards signed, and maybe players signed a pretty decent deal. And if you are, getting your first Bowman, like if you were a player getting your first Bowman, you're probably early on in your career. So like getting this check is probably like pretty decent money. And whether you realize what you're signing or not, like I think that they should be compensated a little bit more. And I think if that's happening, that would be one reason why you might see more product having to be produced, because Topps has to make their money back on these autographs. But I don't know. It's with Topps and Fanatics, I just feel like I almost wish that there was just more money invested back into the industry. And I would have to think that at this point there probably is, because of how drastic the increase in popularity was and what I think that Fanatics and how they see the industry. I would have to imagine that they've looked at these things. Like we hadn't seen any big marketing campaigns like I talked about earlier in the episode. We hadn't seen any big marketing campaigns like that, like really fully produced, like almost movie style quality content, because realistically they didn't have to, because the industry and social media there is millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars these companies are saving in marketing costs because we are an industry built on buying and selling, but also an industry on people growing a brand to buy and sell. And so many impressions they're getting already on social media, just in general. They don't have to chill out the money to spend on a huge marketing campaign. Like realistically, they could even just go to influencer people. We've seen them involve influencers in some of the new Bowman cards, like people tweeting out their cards. I've seen that like every couple releases. Like I think it's Flagship and then Bowman, they've done that. But the involvement of the players has increased, and I think over the next few years needs to continue to increase for there to be, to see the success kind of go over the top. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. My name is Adam Palmer. I am your host. This is the Hobby News Daily Morning Minute. Today is Thursday, November 28th, and today is Thanksgiving. And not really the typical episode today. You're not going to hear the voice after this. You won't hear the voice at the end of the show. But wanted to just come on and give thanks, I guess, to everyone who listens to the podcast. It's been a pretty wild 18 months, to say the least. I mean, I also want to give a shout out to Mike Jokum, one of the original co-hosts of the show, who brought me on and we were working together. And he's such a phenomenal guy. We want to give him a shout out. Obviously, such a huge shout out to all the writers also on Hobby News Daily. I mean, without the writers, really the website is not what it is today without them. Danny and I have been working on that website for 18 months, similar to how we work on the podcast. And, the fact that the writers are getting all their stuff up and getting as many articles as we've gotten up has been super impressive to me. And it's really, I think, one of the only places in the industry where you can have so many creative people all working on the same team. So I want to give a shout out to the writers. And then, obviously Danny, I want to give a shout out to Danny because he has let me do my thing here on the podcast. I mean, there's times where I ask him for advice or I need to make some changes on the show, and he's great at giving feedback on the show. But all in all, I think he's been a phenomenal critiquer of the podcast, but also at the same time has let me kind of do what I need to do. I mean, just kind of a little peek behind the curtains. I mean, this is a pretty wild thing. If we can go back 16 or 15 months at this point, I had started working on the podcast, and this is a kind of, like I said, a fun behind the scenes story. I had started working on the podcast and I was working on the website a little bit, and Danny gave me some of the information to look at some of the back end stuff. And I was like, look, Danny, I think we need to do make a big switch here on the back end. And he trusted me to do that, which I knew what I was doing, obviously. I mean, and it came out exactly how I had pictured it coming out. But Danny, he put the trust in me to do that. So he has been such a phenomenal mentor and all that stuff. So big shout out to Danny. And yeah, I mean, we'll kind of wrap the show up. It's like a quick one here. Just wanted to come on and say thank you to everybody. Like I said, all the listeners, make sure if you're a listener here on the podcast, today, and you want to help us out, go subscribe on YouTube. We would really appreciate that. We're about 400 subscribers. Obviously, I think we're trying to get to around 500 in the next couple months. I mean, it has the YouTube is more for the recap episodes and stuff like that. And Danny has done a lot of phenomenal you can definitely go check out. But yeah, go subscribe on the YouTube. That will be my closing message here as a thank you to everybody. And as if you are a fan of the show and you want to help out the show, like and subscribe on YouTube if you don't mind. And everybody, if you're listening, have a wonderful holiday. Be careful if you're going Black Friday shopping. I'm sure there's probably going to be some icy conditions as we've gotten to the end of November here. But yep, thank you to everybody listening. And Friday, I believe Friday will be a regular episode, so we'll be back at it tomorrow. So I have an article going up on Sports Illustrated that I don't know if by the time this podcast comes out, it will be live or not, but either way. So I was doing some analysis, basically talking about similar stuff to what I talked about, I believe, on Tuesday or Wednesday's episode about players looking to get their debut cards. And there is a great Twitter account that actually has been tracking all of the polls, which I again, the analysis, I think I was wondering. This is okay. Sorry. The Twitter account is TP35 cards. They've been doing a great job tweeting out all of the cards. And then also they have a spreadsheet where they have documented about 50% of the patches have been pulled. So there's like 253, I believe, names on the checklist. And there have been about 226 or 227 at this point of the cards that have been tracked. And as I was writing this, in my head, I was doing the math, and that's about 50%. So the question that I had, and I don't know how long this episode will be. I mean, there isn't really necessarily much news because it's Thanksgiving week. But the thought kind of crossed my head of like, is 50%, like if 50% of this product basically has been distributed, that's how I kind of view it. Or at least that's how it should be viewed. If 50% of the biggest cards within the product have been pulled, I would imagine that 50% of the product has been distributed. At least that's the math that I'm doing in my head. It sort of makes sense why Topps isn't doing this, to be completely honest, because like you don't really want it to be known that only 50% of this product or 50% of the cards and 50% of the product have been distributed. And it makes me wonder if this is like the schedule of when big products come out. If this is how the products get distributed. Like we're about 3 weeks into, I think it was the 13th of November was when Topps Chrome Update came out. So that means we're about 3 weeks into this product's release. And if that's the case, then about 50% of the product has been pulled. So, I mean, we will see another, I don't know how long it's going to take necessarily for the other 50%, because now what's going to happen is that other products are going to come out. Bowman Draft is coming out in a couple weeks. I mean, Prism Football is going to be coming out soon. And I know Prism Football doesn't necessarily have to do with Topps Chrome, but it has to do with like breakers and what products are being broken and what products are out. Just overall. And like I said, I understand why Topps might not want that info, because it's like, if people know that 50% of the product has been pulled and then there's another 50% that, I don't know. I mean, that could hurt potentially like future products if they know like that in the first 2 weeks of the product. And this is me doing a little bit of a hypothetical, but also just kind of basing my commentary on Topps Chrome Update, basically. So if within the first 2 weeks, 50% of the products have been pulled, like, and that means 50% of whatever the biggest cards have been pulled, like, what does that mean for Topps? Like, is this like an anomaly, or is there way more product, and for whatever reason within the first 2 weeks, the 50% of the patch cards have been pulled? I think both of those are maybe not necessarily good. Like if more than 50%, if 50% of these cards have come in like 40% of the product and there's still more than half of the product, like that would make you believe that Topps has the ability to distribute these cards specifically how they want. And that, I think, is not good, and is a reason why Topps probably wouldn't want something like this on their site necessarily. They don't want people to be able to sort of track this info and essentially determine how much of the product is still out there. And it will probably end up tapering off. I mean, I would say before we really see, like, you know, for example, like the Anthony Volpe last year didn't get pulled until July. So people were still opening that product in July. So between now and July, does that mean that there's going to be like another 50%, or like how much product is still out there? And this is sort of a question that I've always thought of and thought about, is like, it's similar to the conversation of like, how many Jordan cards are there left to be graded? Like how many, what's the percentage of total, what's the percentage of total graded Jordans versus how many are left? Like, is it 100%? Is it 70%? I think it's a similar conversation to be talked about with just how many of these cards there really are. And I don't know if I guess I don't know if it's necessarily a bad thing to know that there's 50%. I think if you're Tops, it's probably a bad thing. If you are the consumers, it's definitely a good thing. But again, it's like if in 5-10 years from now, does Tops even care that this is a thing? Because I think the other thing too is like Tops has already made their money on product. Like they have already pre-sold everything that they're going to sell. So it's like on one hand, I could see how they may not want this info, but on the other hand, I could see them just being like, well, we don't really necessarily care because the money's been made. It's really going to come down to the secondary market and breakers to do with this info what they want to do. And to, look at it and say, well, if we're going to keep breaking this, like we're trying to get all the cards or we're trying to squeeze as much of the attention out of Topps Chrome update as we can, I think that's also a possibility. But I just think the percentage, the 50% total cards pulled, I think is a number that I don't know. I mean, I wonder if this is I wonder if that's the like delta for like every product, or if this is like an anomaly. If Topps Chrome update is really like something rare that 50% of these cards have been pulled, or if like overall this is what the actual numbers look like if all the cards were to be tracked.